Hi and welcome to ITQonversations. Today we're going to try to make sense of the innovations in the tech market and especially in the realm of infrastructure and applications. With me today is well-known guest Rouven Besters. Rouven, we connect a lot but haven't spoken in a while. What's up?
So, lots been up. First of all, thanks for having me. Love to be here and it's great to be in the surroundings of people again. It's starting to open up, so first of all, excited about that. So a lot has happened, right? So we formed this new business unit a year and a half ago when a couple of these new companies were joined with VMware. And now a year and a half in, and now with the recent announcements within VMworld, I think you see that it's opened up to applications and it's opened up to business outcomes in Tanzu. And I'm glad to see that the market is evolving towards really looking at outcomes and really trying to make sure that we connect the dots of business outcomes, applications, and then infrastructure. So it's been a great ride. The team is really getting full up to speed, and we're making markets, so that's good.
Yeah, great. And so talking about this talking about outcomes again and business value, I have sometimes the feeling that we got sidetracked a little bit the last couple of years into all the cool new innovation on the tech side and products and innovations, but lost a little bit sight of that. How do you see VMware and the road forward there?
I think we've been very successful in helping really the bigger enterprises moving towards business outcomes by way of software. I think within the infrastructure world, let's not forget initially that the bigger investments and the bigger efforts go into infrastructure. Yeah. So I think it's natural that there's a gravity towards infrastructure and that we're all being consumed about how do we build from the ground up infrastructure to get to that outcome. I think what we're currently probably seeing is that it was a lot about abstracting it. It was a lot about moving towards cloud because cloud could get us towards the business outcomes. I think what we're seeing now is companies are a bit kind of coming back from that decision of having public cloud as the answer. It was just a means to an end. Then we looked for another abstraction, which was Kubernetes. And then we figured this is going to help us get the outcomes. And I think the realization now again is it's just a means to an end, and it's just a milestone. It doesn't get us to really where we need to be. So I think if we take that into account, we're getting again back to, okay, so what is this all about and why are we doing this? How can we make companies successful? And companies are thinking about how can I be successful by way of software development and by way of infrastructure components, whether that be private cloud or public cloud. I think that notion is again probably getting back to us, but let's not forget it is still very complex to build the right infrastructure components to get to that outcome. And I think that's also where now the coming together of Tanzu within VMware is going to help customers on both sides, right? Applications and infrastructure.
So let's dive a little bit deeper on that because you say we are not there yet on talking specifically about the containers, Kubernetes. When I talk to organizations, sometimes some have the idea that I'll just install this shiny Kubernetes platform and I'm there, but people more on the business side expect something else from those platforms. And I think we see a movement that addresses this gap in expectations, like the developer experience gap. How are we going forward on that?
It's an interesting notion. I think, with the DevOps and DevSecOps, that sort of concept in and of itself already says that they need to be closer together. But I think for a lot of companies, that's still very much an ambition, right? Some companies have maybe implemented DevOps or DevSecOps in parts of their organization. But when you really look at infrastructure operations and how that meets the need of developers, there's still probably a gap to resolve. And that's what we've set out to do with the Tanzu portfolio. Yeah. So the MapBU stands for Modern Applications Business Unit. That's around applications. What we deliver is the Tanzu portfolio. And the Tanzu portfolio is designed to actually close that gap. How do we make developers more productive, providing them with the experience that they actually need in order to be quicker, getting features and functions and products out the door faster, but at the same time, lowering the complexity of getting there. I think we can talk about that a bit more, but I think looking at public cloud as initially being the answer, some of the companies have now seen actually it's not really the answer, right? The answer is somewhere else. And the answer is not trying to build your own platform on top of a public cloud or a hyperscaler, but really making sure that you drive outcomes again. So you need to be focused on how do I get developers more productive? How do I make my operations more secure and more consistent so that it becomes less complex? I think that's what we've set out to do, and that's currently, I think, the recent announcement as well within VMworld is really what this delivers. So I'm excited to see that happening.
Yeah, especially about the cloud. I mean, cloud remains hot, but we see that also in our experience that some customers and other organizations, they, especially those that have been very ambitious from the start to get big bang all in the cloud, they sometimes reconsider because it doesn't pay out, or it was more complex, or the cost was too high. What do you think that is VMware ideally suited for taking those customers forward, especially because they don't have let's say they are not the hyperscaler themselves?
So our heritage obviously is on-prem. Yeah. So, and I think VMware, the brand, is already kind of points to that, right? The heritage. But I think if you look at the recent announcements and the movements and the strategy, already years ago we've set out to really combine the clouds together. Yeah. So that's what we've done already for years, and that's where customers are really successful in deploying workloads on top of either VMware or any hyperscaler. I think where companies we're now kind of overturning their decision to really go all in, right? We've heard that I'm going all in Azure, I'm going all in AWS, which I think it has a very good reason, because you're still trying to get to outcomes. You're still trying to get to infrastructure services faster, application services faster, and that was the promise. But I think companies have also learned a couple of things, and I think you've addressed them already. One is cost, right? We see that getting into cloud, the cost can exponentially grow, and the growth doesn't really stop, right? It's not that we've now gained the outcomes and that meets the purpose of the investment. So the investment and the return becomes a challenge. There's a bigger debate now, I think, going on, which is cloud economics in and of itself. That's one. The second is it becomes very complex, right? If you really want to build and close the gap with what developers actually need, how can they become quicker, better, faster? How can they become more secure? Then you need to build a lot on top of public cloud. You need to consume a lot of services, and those need to be designed, architected, they need to be secured, and that has its own life cycle. Now, so now you're building a system, and that system has its life cycle, and that also is very complex but very costly as well. And then third is think about the knowledge that you then have to build up, and think about also the risk of really choosing one cloud. And the other thing is, and this is about the applications. Applications don't have one destiny, right? We have applications spanning back maybe some companies 30, 40 years. Yeah. You have to look at the application and the context of the application and what that needs in terms of platform. And I think then the realization and notion is very quickly, it can't be all in one place. It can't all be in a given hyperscaler. It can't all be on VMware. You'll have cloud native and traditional and multiple workloads. So first look at the context, look at the process, look at the company around it, and then look at where should that reside. And companies have seen that making a choice for a cloud doesn't mean that you'll get your applications there. So now they're kind of seeing, oh, I wanted to get all those applications in the cloud, and actually I'm not being 100% successful. So I need to maintain, or I need to kind of build sort of a multi-cloud strategy, which is where VMware is able to not just say, okay, but we're embracing and accelerating the journey of these companies to multiple clouds, right? Whether that be on-prem or hyperscalers. And I think we're the only company to really have one, to really be able to provide one operation, one consistent security, and one consistent development environment across multiple clouds. And that means also the housing and the hosting of those applications.
So you already mentioned like the on-premise market. It's very easy to make the connection between on-premises being legacy. Is that a fair and correct line of thinking, or is it more subtle than that?
It's more subtle. It's a longer answer. So I think it's interesting, right? We talked about VMware and the name that it has and the brand that it has. It's because VMware has set the standards for what we now today call cloud. Mm-hmm. So if we think about heritage, or if we think about legacy in that context, then I think yes, for a certain portion. But we're still sometimes thinking of VMware as a synonym to vSphere, which is one of the many components of all the innovations that VMware bring on a yearly basis, that we're actually looking at that from. But even from a vSphere perspective, if you look at all the workloads that are still on a daily basis, new workloads being built and being designed and being then deployed on vSphere, that's immense. That's huge. VMware has 500,000 customers, so the sheer talk about legacy when those many applications are still being deployed on VMs, it is more subtle than that. So think about Tanzu, for instance. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Tanzu, but not because I'm a big fan. If you look at the recent announcements from VMworld and what those innovations bring for new companies and what they bring for enterprises, right? How they really are enabling companies to modernize their application estate and then make the selection of, okay, now I have a modern application, where do I have that reside? But then doing that with one consistent layer to manage and deploy all the applications, I think is profound. So I think you can't make VMware synonym to one thing, right? VMware is synonym to a lot of things, and a lot of these new technical innovations that we bring on a yearly basis should point everyone into a different direction, right? We're actually accelerating companies moving towards multiple clouds, which I think no company can do.
So, I mean, for customers, this whole new environment going from on-premise to multiple clouds, VMware can help with one operational model on top of that. But what can we do to help them in their migration of their application portfolio?
Yeah,
is there anything that we? Yeah,
definitely. So we've done the work ourselves together with multiple clients, helping them assess what type of applications do I need in order to get business outcomes. Let's again start with the business outcomes. So if you're trying to get applications in the hands of your users faster, if you're trying to innovate by way of software, if you're trying to modernize processes by way of software, then we need to know what that requires, and then where you currently are with your application estate. Yeah. And then trying to define the gap from where you are today to where you need to be with applications, I think is the interesting bit. And there's a lot of work that we're doing around that. So with the Tanzu Labs brand, together with partners like yourselves, obviously we're going out to customers, really assessing their application estates, assessing their capabilities from a platform perspective, assessing their capabilities from an infrastructure perspective, and then driving together a roadmap towards how do we make sure that all lines up to what we're trying to achieve from a business standpoint. And I think there's a lot of sort of experiences that we've brought. So we've done thousands of these migrations with bigger and smaller companies. We can bring all those experiences to new customers or new clients that are coming to us and asking us to help them defining where they are today and then where they need to be, and especially that sort of gap resolution, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thanks, Rouven. It's great to have you here, and let's connect in like the physical world more often, and again in the future in this post-pandemic situation. On that, I would like to wrap this up. If you're interested in what we can do together with VMware in the application space and the infrastructure space, leave us a message.